Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Turtles Love Pizza. This is the podcast where we talk about everything to do with the Ninja Turtles, including comics, movies, action figures, and whatnot. This is Steven,
This is Andrew.
and today we have a special guest appearance. We have Juni Ba. He is actually the writer of two really great comics, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Annual 2022, as well as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Armageddon Game, The Alliance. And this is the one with Alopex. So, Juni, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're great.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Andrew, you want to start off?
Start off? Sure. So, Junie, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? I know oftentimes we kind of read the titles of, artists or illustrators on comic books, but we don't really get to know who they are as people. So could you just give us a little background about you?
So I'm what you call a cartoonist, I guess. So I usually write and draw my own stuff most of the time.
Okay, cool.
Which is what I did on the TMNT stuff. Most of the work that I've done so far has been with like TKO, where I did a West African fantasy book called Jelia. Image, where I made Monkey Meat, which is a series of short stories on an island owned by a corporation that sells cans of monkey meat. And like some stuff from like Marvel and DC, like covers and short stories and stuff. And next month I have two new books coming out. One is with Dark Horse called The Unlikely Story of Felix and Macabre. And the other one is called Mobilis, and it's coming from TKO, both in October.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe if you could just give us some background. We read a little bit about your biography. What was it like growing up in Senegal, and how did that influence your art?
Oh, it teaches you dedication and patience, I guess. It's like because it's a West African country. There's a lack of access of some stuff. So usually, what I would do was I would I had TV, so I knew of the existence of a bunch of stuff. I was watching TV shows, movies, and stuff. For a long time, we didn't have a theater. We had one when I was small, and then there was a good 10 years, maybe even more than that, when there was no theater in the entire town. And it was like the actual capital of the country. And so same for comics. Like there was very few American comics, a few European ones, and very few manga. So what I would do was that almost every summer we would go to Europe, and I would take that as an opportunity to sort of like, I had a list of stuff that I knew about because I saw it on the internet. And so I knew, okay, when I go on vacation, I need to get my hands on copies of this and this and this. And that would go for like movies, books, video games. And so it also means that a lot of the stuff that I was reading when I was a kid, because you buy it at that time and that's all you have for the rest of the year, you read that stuff over and over again, or you watch it over and over again. And I'm very like one of the jokes and my friends love making is that I am quite possibly autistic, and one of the signs is that I can get very obsessed by something at one point. Like I have special interests type behaviors, I guess. So there's a lot of books that I had when I was a kid, and a lot of movies that I know by heart. I could tell you all the pages of different books that I was reading when I was a kid because I read them over and over again. So that's like I guess I started drawing through that, like knowing the pages and how they're constructed and everything, and spending so much time trying to figure out why they are made the way they are. So a lot of my art came from just obsessing over stuff and trying to understand why it is how it is.
What was your like go-to one? Like, what was your favorite one growing up that you just read over and over again?
Yeah.
It changed a lot depending on the time. So like Shaman King is one that really introduced me to manga as a whole, like as an actual.
Oh, yeah, Shaman
I
King.
knew
That's
I
a
knew
good
about anime and stuff like that. I was watching on TV, but Shaman King was the thing that made me realize, okay, these are actually like a style or a genre of comics coming from a specific country, and there's a lot of stuff that you could be discovering. So from Shaman King, I started reading more stuff like One Piece and Naruto and stuff like that. Like even
Nice.
now I'm working on a book and I have like a copy of One Piece, a copy of D. Greyman. I'm not even sure D. Greyman still exists.
How far are you on? Are you like current with One Piece? Because I mean, it's been going on for like 20 years.
No, I've never been current with One Piece. I have a few copies. I love watching like the movies and maybe
Hmm.
one episode once in a while, but like I have no idea what's going on in that show.
Oh, it is amazing right now. It is like the Wano arc because they just finished up Wano and it is amazing. You should, but Wano is so long.
Yeah,
Like if you're reading the manga, it takes up so many chapters. I stopped after I finished Wano because I was like, okay, I'm gonna let it kind of get ahead and then just binge read it at another
yeah,
point in time.
that's the
But
thing
it,
too.
yeah,
and
it
if
was
you
really cool.
and if you have Netflix, you can start watching the live action one too, right? Is it in France?
Yeah, it is. But the thing is, the reason I don't want to watch the live action is not because of anything to do with the show itself. It's just that the best version remains the manga and the anime. Besides, like the live action is still at this at the part of the One Piece story that I know because I've already watched that part in the anime. So if I
Hmm.
was to get back into One Piece, I would have to do it around the time I dropped, I guess.
Yeah, that
Uh,
makes sense.
Ah,
I will
and plus,
say the
yeah.
live action is totally Oda's blessing, which is
yeah,
amazing. Like everything got approved by him, so it really shows when you watch it. And
yeah.
it's fun to watch it with the Japanese audio because they got the original anime voice actors from Japan to dub it. So it's really awesome to
Really?
watch it that way. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, no, my decision has nothing to do with like the quality of the show as itself. It's more that
Hmm.
like, especially to me as a cartoonist, like so much of One Piece is in the visuals and the
Oh yeah,
expressiveness
Hmm.
definitely.
and the
Yeah.
craziness of the world. So like Luffy as a real person doesn't appeal to me. I guess when the original Luffy exists and as a drawing he works so well, and the same applies to everything else. Like so much of the design in One Piece is just insane. Like even the animators had to learn how to animate those characters because their anatomy is so weird.
Right.
Hmm.
Very true. Yeah, I'm really interested to see how they kind of keep this going as
Yeah,
like the powers get crazier. So
yeah. I am curious to see that. Like I would be curious just to see how long they can keep this up. Especially with like the luxury you don't have is that it's kind of like the same thing with the MCU where your actors age
mhm,
and all their
Yeah.
sequels want to go do something else. So you can't have the same longevity as you do with the anime, I guess.
right.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, if you don't mind, since we're a Ninja Turtle podcast, why don't we jump a little bit into that? One of our first questions is, who's your favorite turtle? And I see you have an action figure with you right now. So,
It's Leonardo.
Leonardo.
oh, really?
Yeah.
So, what stands out to you about Leonardo?
I guess there are two reasons. Like when I was a kid, he was already my favorite, but I think it's mostly because of like child logic of he's the leader and he has swords. So
Yeah, I
you
felt the same way as a kid.
yeah. So when you're a kid, you don't need much like to get attached to a character. So that was my reasoning. And then I sort of like felt out of interest around the turtles, and then the interest came back around 2012, and it sort of like got me to read the original comics and the IDW comics and a bunch of other versions as well, and also get back into various cartoons. I watched the 2003 one that I had actually never like watched in its entirety before, and my interest in Leo was renewed, but in a new way. In that I'm an older brother, so I understand some of that. And there's also the
Hmm.
fact that like I like characters who have like contradictions or I want to say like character defects. And there's a scene in the 2007 animated movie they made where he's fighting Raph on a rooftop,
Hmm.
and Raph is
That's a
complaining.
good one.
Yeah, and like the movie is worth it just because of that scene, basically. Because like Raphael is complaining about how Leo basically gave up and left, which is how he
Yeah.
felt what happened. But Leo feels it more like I have the duty of trying to get better, so I had to get out of New York and live my own adventures to learn and stuff. So basically, they have different ideas of why the big brother had to abandon his little brothers, and
Hmm.
it would have been so easy to write this scene as, yeah, Raphael is just being annoying and angry like always. But they have Leo say something along the lines of, you can't be the leader instead of me, basically, because I'm better than you. And I love that scene because I love the idea that Leo has the burden of being the leader of the team, but on some level, he also sort of like has this arrogance of thinking it's because I'm better than the others that I'm being put in this position. And I like that. I like this. Like, there's a little bit of darkness there, and I like that idea. There's a lot you can tell based on just this paradox, I guess. He's the nice big brother, very dutiful, very like disciplined and everything, but at the same time, there's a level of arrogance that comes with it, and I found that very interesting.
Cool. Yeah. That that's a much deeper take than I took to watch of
Yeah,
watching
both
that.
of us. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think I can watch that movie the same again.
Yeah. And I remember we were reviewing it, Andrew, and like I think we remembered that scene being our favorite too. But of course, we thought of it as just an animation. Like this is the best fight scene, you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it
Wh-
did stem from like the original idea for the fourth movie for
Mm,
like the live action series because
yeah.
they did have that
yeah,
storyboarded out um, when they were first trying to do, but they also had like a crazy like mutation story and everything else. But I'm glad they kind of took that more sentimental part of it and like kept that in as
Yeah.
like an evolution of his character and the character of Raphael. So
Yeah. And I find it very
yeah,
effective. Like, usually when I have to like explain to people why I like the TMNT, what I say usually is that there's a reason why I came back to it as an adult, which is that the the concept is extremely stupid, but somehow they managed to make very human and very poignant stories out of like a very stupid concept. And the mix of the two is great because you have really fun, goofy, cartoony stuff next to very human moments. When you have like Leo who just got destroyed by the ninja, the Foot Clan, and they have to hide in Northampton, and you have Raphael standing on top of the barn every night just because he's scared of his brothers getting attacked again.
mhm,
He's a mutated turtle. They should not have this level of like human weakness and sympathy in a story about like cartoony mutant ninja turtles, and yet they actually put it off.
right. Well, I mean, speaking of like having that heart and that depth and emotion, the annual that you put out for TMNT, like the story seems very like personal.
Yeah,
This story of like grief and loss, and I know personally, I recently lost a family member, and rereading it, to prepare for this interview, it definitely hits differently now.
yeah,
To read it is this something like that you were trying to you yourself had some loss and were trying to get out those
yeah.
kinds of emotions? So
Yeah, so I had the idea for the story before I was asked to do the annual. Basically, it was that thing that I was keeping under my belt for maybe one day. And the reason I had it was that I lost both my grandparents a few months apart.
oh,
And it
mm,
started from this idea of what would it be like to be able to go back to their room even though they're not there anymore. Like, it's the essentially going back to the space you know them from, like the space that they've occupied your whole life,
hmm,
but they're not occupying that space anymore. The space is just there. And I didn't get to do it because I live in another country, and they've destroyed the house now.
oh,
But
sorry.
but yeah,
I
it's
see.
cool. I made my peace with that aspect of it. I guess the story was also my way of like vicarious way of doing it, of like
Hmm.
Hmm.
having characters who get to do the thing that I could not do, I guess.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. And I actually just reread it too, and it's such a beautiful story. And I kind of want to get in your art because it's so kinetic, but it's so simple. Like, how did you develop like these visual aesthetics and just like I love just the fact that you're able to just draw a couple of blur lines and we know exactly what it is. So how did you get to that aesthetic as well as the ninja moves, like the actual action moves? Like are you do you have like are you looking at examples or do you have live, people doing it for you and you just kind of sketch it or how do you normally do it?
So the style part is like a lot of training and a lot of like mixing. I guess I used to like describe myself as being at the crossroad between Euro comics, like really stuff for kids, Mike Mignola, and shonen manga. And
Mm.
I would just mix all those things together. Now I have a lot more Darwin Cook in the stuff that I do. But yeah, those are the main influences, and then you have more little ones, I guess. But the idea was, I realized very quickly when I was like 17, I think I got into Hellboy, and the big
Hmm.
discovery was, oh, you can simplify things to this degree and it works. Because before that I had been reading a bunch of different comics, but I was really into manga, and a lot of them are very detailed or cartoony characters in very detailed backgrounds. And I was always like, I always felt ill-equipped because I could not achieve that level of mastery, I guess. And I realized that actually I was much more interested in simplifying things to the nth degree. Like my favorite cartoon is Samurai Jack. So
Yes.
yeah, so I had my proclivities, I guess, from a very early age, and then Mignola was kind of my green light of, yes, you're actually allowed to do this. It's not bad. You're not a bad artist for doing things this way. Which doesn't mean that you still don't have to learn how to draw them realistically and detailed. You still need to know how that
Hmm.
works. But the actual style that you're going to use for your comics can be a lot more simplified. And so I'm obsessed with like simplifying things to the point where it really looks like a logo. I find it more aesthetically pleasing, but that's just my personal preference for my stuff. Action is the same thing. Like once you've figured out how to simplify them, how do you make them move? Is more of a looking at cartoons, especially on the anime side of things, or
Hmm.
how Japanese creators draw their fight scenes. There's a lot of stuff that looked a lot more detailed and, and complicated to me when I was a kid. And reading it again now, I'm realizing that it's actually a lot more simple to draw than I thought. And I think it's also like just growing in skills, I guess. And
Hmm.
then for the TMNT themselves, I remember like searching videos of people using the different weapons just to get a sense of what
Okay.
the proper grip for every one of them was supposed to be. And the type of moves that you could do. There's a page where Leo is using one sword to fight off like the claws of the monster, and I think I took that specific sequence of movements from somewhere, like an actual Japanese swordsman. I think just videos of someone
Oh.
those tools, and then I tried to figure out how I can put that into the fight sequence, and then
Hmm.
I watched a lot of Jackie Chan movies. Because the
By the
idea,
way, have you seen the new Mutant Mayhem movie?
yeah, I have.
What did you think of it?
I really liked it. I really liked it. It's funny because like I wouldn't say it's one of those situations where you're like, I would not have done it that way if it was me.
Hmm.
But as its own thing, it works really well, and that's really all you can ask of anything anyway. So even
Hmm.
if it's not how I would have done the turtles, it works really well as a movie and as its own version of things. And
Hmm.
I was like, I had a good time basically. And the action sequences were really well made. Like they had the montage that they have where all the turtles are
Yeah.
attacking different criminal lairs, and you have like
Yeah.
some lo-fi rap on beneath like the tribal quest stuff. Like that was good. That was so good.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
Yeah.
so I'm just happy that the movie is good as its own thing, which is really what I want of any version of anything.
Yeah, I think Steve and I were geeking out over the fact that Splinter fights like Jackie Chan
Yeah,
when he fights. Like it
yeah.
was just amazing that they could capture that.
Yeah, because like I feel like there's a bit of a science. It's an art as well, but there's a bit of a science in the Jackie Chan style of fighting, which I tried to use for this book. Of like the idea of the annual was, okay, you're gonna have this big broly dude attacking them. How do you choreograph a fight scene, and what do you want to
Hmm.
convey with it? And because the whole idea was showing that the brothers have been kind of disconnected from each other, the whole thing, the big idea was we need to show that they've lost their touch, and the opponent that they have is really scary. And then I thought of Jackie Chan because most of the fight scene he has are this idea of this lone guy against a group of people, and he's always fighting them with like whatever he has around him, and he's always like, I'm so sorry. Like he didn't want to fight. He just really wants to be left alone and he wants to get out of the situation. But from the
Right.
perspective of villains that he's fighting, he's alone against all of them, and he's managing to draw circles around them in ways that are just insane. That must be scary from
Yeah.
the perspective of the guys in the group. So that was kind of the idea of like, we're gonna treat the monster like he's Jackie Chan. So he's not gonna ask for like forgiveness, and he's not gonna he's attacking, but he's drawing circles around all of them, and I don't even understand how that's possible.
How
Wow,
did you
that's
come
really
up with
interesting.
yeah? How did you come up with the design for the monster? He looks like really interesting. Like,
Uh,
is there actually like a leech spirit? Because I
no.
was trying to look it up, I couldn't find something.
Okay, so what was the thought process? Yeah, I was pacing in my friend's bookshop, trying to figure out what I could do. And usually when ideas come, they sort of come in flashes. And so the idea
Yeah.
here was he's gonna be feeding off of their feelings, like emotions and stuff, like
Hmm.
grief, like that. So leech, the idea of the leech came from that because that's the most. It would have been like I don't know, mosquito or something. Any animal that gives the idea of something that sucks stuff from you, basically. And then the rest of the design came from the idea that he would be this spirit that's been living for a long time and was sort of related to like people who died at war in fights and stuff. So the idea of a very old knight. So, and also because I
Oh.
draw a cool knight mutant. Like a lot of my ideas and story ideas tend to come from I want to draw this. So once I had the idea of the thing, I was like, okay, I need to make him look like a knight because that would be really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. It kind of reminds me of like what's that one Indiana Jones movie? Um,
The third
I forget
one,
the third one. Was it the Yeah, it was the third one.
Yeah, there's a knight in that one. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, he like they get to the back room and there's a knight guarding the cup.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
that
one of the inspirations. I think the
Yeah,
beer came from that.
cool.
and yeah, that brought me to another question because your art is fairly cinematic. Like you could basically do all of your stories through your visuals. Like you don't even need any kind of like dialogue in actuality. Your art is so crisp and clear on emotion and motion. So my next question was kind of like, what are some of the movies that influenced you? Because I'm a movie guy, Andrew's a movie guy, and yeah, I just see. I mean, I know you mentioned Ninja Turtle, Jackie Chan just now, and Indiana Jones, but what are some of the other influences that you might have in terms of cinema?
I want to say there's a lot, but there's also a lot of like, weirdly enough, in the case of TMNT, a lot of the inspirations came from the fact that when I was a kid, my brother and I and my dad, we had a bit of a tradition when we were watching movies. So when we still had a theater, and even a little after that, what we did was that we would rent DVDs, and every week we had a different DVD. And so because we were kids and we were boys, we rented a lot of action movies, and our favorite action star was Jet Li. Because of that, and movies like The Matrix and a bunch of other things like that, or like Van Helsing, we had an obsession for what we call the final fight. Because every one of those movies had a final fight. And so my dad, my brother, and I, we would almost judge the entire movie on how good the final showdown between the hero and the villain was. And Jet Li, generally speaking, had very good final fights.
Yeah.
Um, for TMNT, there was a lot of like Jet Li inspiration. I rewatched the one because that's my favorite one of the
Oh,
American
really?
movies. Anyway, that was a movie that we were really into when we were kids, like with my brother. Like the I think because it's a really good mix of those two things of like kind of a goofy tone, but also very emotional bits with really cool action sequences and a very like high concept. So like we were really into it, and that was like the whole concept of the evil twin and stuff. Like when you're a kid, again, you don't necessarily need much to be hooked. Yeah, I would say a
Right.
lot of, like action cinema from the early 2000s and the late 90s, and
Hmm.
even the Chinese side of things.
Okay. Wow, that
All right, so you like?
so have you ever? Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
go for it. Go for it.
I was just gonna say, so you put the one over like Romeo Must Die and like all those other ones. Like Romeo Must Die is my favorite of his American
Yeah.
movies.
Like,
Oh man.
I'm not saying it's better than the others. Besides, I think you need to rewatch them all to actually be able to say this one is better than the others. I am purely speaking on in terms of personal preference because it just
Yeah.
happens to hit my personal taste, I guess. Just like Van Helsing is
Yeah.
not a movie that I ever say is good, but I love it.
I agree. I agree. I remember seeing it in theaters, and it was very very fun. That's for sure.
So yeah, like I have a list of like movies in that vein where I just like having a good time watching heroes do cool shit, and it
Yeah.
isn't something that you could show your friends and be like, you'd have to show it to the friends that you know already like this type of stuff because
Yeah.
else would just not vibe with it, and that's okay.
Oh yeah. So we have another friend that like is into horror and I'm into horror, but we try to pull Steven in and he just can't vibe with any of that.
I
do you
understand.
do you like horror movies, or what is your thought on that too?
On the horror movies. There are movies that I love, and then okay, I'm trying to figure out like movies that I like horror movies that I enjoy, like stuff like Rosemary's Baby, or even more recently like stuff
Oh.
like. But I have a lot of issues with movies like The Nun. I tried watching The Nun yesterday, and I can't. It's just not
Yeah,
for me.
the Nun was not that great of a
Yeah,
horror.
like movies that seem to just coast by on jump scares and very little flimsy story. I'm not really into the movies the horror movies that tend to be about something or have some meat to them and have a really interesting direction. I really like.
Yeah, I agree. Like I always tell our friend Jason that for me, like I like the mythology behind the creatures. That as long as that's like
Yeah.
kind of explored and expanded, like I tend to enjoy those types of films more than just oh it's a jump scare, oh just going around killing a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely understand that part.
And just piggybacking off of that, so although we're a Ninja Turtle podcast, we really want to get to know a little more about your other work too. For me, like you mentioned, how do you say it? Gelia? Is it
Yeah. Yeah.
Gelia?
Jelly.
Yeah. So how did you get hooked up with TKO in the first place? Did you and because Mobilis is a TKO project as well. Like how are you able to sustain that relationship? Will you have more projects going on with them as well?
So Delia is a project that I had been working on like a good 5 years, 5 or 6 years before I signed it.
Hmm.
And I struggled quite a bit to get it published in France. And then eventually I just followed my uncle's advice, which was to pitch it to an American company.
Mm.
And the big issue that the French market has is that a lot of these companies have existed for a long time, so they tend to have their ways, their habits, if you will.
Okay.
And so I thought, okay, if you're going to pitch it to an American company, you should go for a company that hasn't existed for a long time because they would not be set in their ways in the same way. So,
Hmm.
and TKO had existed for like a year at that point, and it seemed to be going fairly.
Yeah.
Like I asked another artist who worked with them, and he told me that it went well, they paid well, and everything. So I sent a message essentially saying, I have a book that I would like to pitch. Would you like to take a look? The editor responded that they don't usually do that, but they had been like watching over what I had been doing, so they were interested to see what I had to offer, and that's how I
Hmm.
started my first book.
Oh wow,
That
that's
And then
amazing.
that is yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
and then a year later, the editor again, Sebastian, just sent an email asking, "Do you have anything else you want to do?" And I was like, "Yeah, there's this book. It's about Captain Nemo." And it's the thing that saved me from depression and suicide, I guess. So I would really like to make it. And half an
Oh
hour later,
wow.
I received the contract.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah. So yeah, the it's pretty nice because like I like working with them, and they don't necessarily take everything I want to do. Like there was a book that I wanted to do that they passed on because they felt it was a little too much like Jelia, and I perfectly understand.
Mm.
Yeah, but like it's nice knowing that you have this place that they told me you can come back, and every time you have an idea, you can show it to us directly, and we can tell you if that looks interesting to us or not. Um, and I have a really good relationship with them, so it's pretty nice. Like I like knowing that I have this place where I can have an in more easily than in other places, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about Monkey Meat? I gotta tell you, man, Monkey Meat was one of the weirdest, funniest like comics I'd ever read, and it's kind of like it's sort of like a critique of capitalism. It's sort of like black magic, all these other things. Like, where did you come up with these ideas? Like, where did that come from?
I'd say it's because I'm a millennial. Like there's a lot of like I was looking at it and I realized that there's a lot of stuff that comes from me sort of remixing stuff that I grew up with, um,
Hmm.
and just thoughts that I have about the world that I'm in, I guess. It's kind
Hmm.
of it's like when it started coming out, you had all these articles about like critics of criticism of capitalism and everything. And my dad last December we're in the car, and he just starts asking very matter of factly like, since when do you have a political consciousness? Yeah. So and the thing is, I guess I have one, and I am interested in these matters. But the thing is, I really wanted Monkey Meat to be more about what it's like living in the world today, in a very exaggerated way. So I'm not writing Monkey Meat stories as sort of a pamphlet of this is what I think about the world. It's more so this is what I feel it is like living in the world, I guess. Like the first story is especially like that. It's sort of a heightened idea of feeling like you're being used by your employer or the system around you to
Yeah.
any degree. And that's sort of the basis of the book, I guess. So the reason why it feels the way it does is because it's really just me taking advantage of the fact that I don't have an editor, I don't have a company behind me that's like, you can't do this for whatever marketing reasons. I can just throw whatever I want, and no one is going to tell me no because it's Image Comics and they don't really care.
That's awesome. Like, how'd you get hooked up? If you don't mind us asking, is it kind of the same concept with TKO or?
No, actually, the editor at TKO gave me the email of the main publisher at Image. And
Oh, okay.
then, like, he did the introductions, and then I just sent the pitch for Monkey Meat, and he was like, yeah, sure.
Oh wow, building a little network.
Yeah, yeah, which is very important. Like for anyone who wants to work in this type of job, the being able to sort of like keep up with the different not relationships as such, because it's not like you have to text them every week. Uh, but it's nice being able to like have a good working relationship with someone because then they can also refer you to other people.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
also even on a psychological level, it's like it's kind of nice because you know that you're being valued by the people who hire you, and that they
Hmm.
feel comfortable recommending you to other people. It makes you more comfortable and more able to like give your all, I guess.
Okay, cool. So, like, when you write, do you write in English or do you write in French?
English,
In English.
yeah,
How
and
many languages do you know?
two and a half, I guess. I speak some Wolof, but even now, like living in France, a lot of my Wolof has disappeared, and it comes back whenever I go back to Senegal.
Oh,
Never spoken it fluently. In English, I learned of like school and the internet. So
okay.
yeah, so I would say French and English and a little bit of Wolof.
So yeah, so I see you've been playing with these little Ninja Turtle figures down there. Um, and we know like Stan Sakai has been like working with NECA to like develop his own figures. So like I have Usagi Yojimbo like that he's like signed. It's like a black and white one, and then he
Yeah,
also just came out with the space Usagi, which is really cool. I have that one too. Like, would you be interested in like having like your comic book characters become figures?
I would love that.
You would love that. Which I guess which character would you want to be your first figure?
I mean, the TMNT for one, that's an obvious one, but also the characters from Jelia, uh,
Hmm.
especially like the two main heroes and the main antagonist. Like my dad even told me like because like the main antagonist is this like really massive 3 meters tall boar, and my dad was like, I
Yeah.
need this I need this guy as an action figure on my desk. My dad doesn't have action figures. My dad isn't even into this type of stuff, so I don't even know what possessed him. I just think maybe this might just appeal to him. But I was like, yeah, okay, well, I'm gonna do my best to make that happen. So yeah, the main characters of Jelia, the TMNT designs that I have, and I have done some stuff for Batman, and I really like the designs that I made for Robin. So
Yeah.
would love like a figure of that version of Robin.
Yeah, and I was kind of interested, like, because I'm a huge DC guy. I grew up reading Batman and Superman. Like, if you could get into the big two, like, or when you can get into the big two, who are the main characters that you would love to work with? Like, who are the characters that you love the most? Like, from the big two, I guess, DC, Marvel.
Um, hmm. So I've already done Black Panther once. He wasn't
Ooh.
necessarily at the top of the list, but he was in the list, so I can cross him out. I would like to do some Thor, I guess, but weirdly enough, I think I'm very much into DC more than I am into Marvel. So for the Batman stuff, I'm covered. I've already done it. I am still doing it, and I would love to do some Superman someday. Like I have an idea for a Superman miniseries, like something that would span a good like 200 years, maybe even more. Um,
Mm.
Etrigan is a character that I think could have potential, but I'm not exactly sure what I would do with him. I just know that it would be fun, and plus there's a challenge of figuring out how to write his dialogue.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Mm.
his dialogue's always fun.
yeah, like that's the
Yeah,
thing.
rhyming.
Yeah, like having this limitation, I guess, and everything
Yeah.
to do with the fourth world seems very fun.
Yeah.
I think basically, aside from Batman, which is overused to hell. I would not want to use Batman. I would love to do stuff around him. I feel like he's kind of like I see him a little bit like Gandalf for me, in the sense that he's best used as a secondary like supporting character, not as a main character.
Mm.
He's been used as a main character so much that it's really difficult to figure out what to do next with him. That hasn't
Yeah.
been done before. Whereas if you use him as a supporting character, you really can lean into the mystery and the vibe of the character and all that, and the mystical, not the mystical, the mythical, the mythic aspect of Batman, because he's being seen
Hmm.
from the perspective of someone else. But yeah, so aside from Batman, I would really want to lean into characters who are very out there and don't necessarily get the spotlight all that often. So the Fourth World and Etrigan,
Hmm.
because like I don't know, the Fourth World is one of those really crazy things. Like, I mean, it's a Jack Kirby thing. It's like the guy was, it's like
Yeah.
born with drugs in his system. So yeah, I
Yeah,
want.
I love the fourth world, especially Orion. I don't know why Orion stands out to me. I think it was always the glider. He just looks really cool with the glider.
That's exactly who I was thinking of, and I mean, there's a tendency in like, so I can't really speak to the everyday monthly stuff because I don't really read it. But whenever you have sort of
Hmm.
some sort of a prestige miniseries type book that comes out, they tend
Hmm.
to sort of try to be deconstructive and be kind of sad and stuff. Like we were talking about the fourth world, like the miracle Mr. Miracle book.
Yeah.
It's not really superhero story to me, which is not to say that it's a bad book. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it doesn't have the vibe of like adventurous, fun stuff that you would find in Darwin Cookbook, for example. And that's
I see what you mean.
I lean more towards the Darwin Cook vibe of things, which is to say you can make your stories as complex as you want and talk about difficult and complex themes, but you still keep this idea of a fun adventure, something kind of all ages and with characters who represent the good in all of us. And so that's really where I would like to lean when I do superhero stuff.
I gotcha. And before we end it, we kind of want to ask you, Like, do you have a favorite Ninja Turtles movie, or is it that TMNT 2007 you're talking about? Which one stands out the most to you?
Uh, I would say 2007, but it's because of that one scene. I can't really. I feel like the first live action movie is still the best one as a whole,
Yeah.
I
but
totally agree with that one.
the high of that specific 2007 scene on the rooftop is the best like TMNT movie moment to me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
All right. I think we're all on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
totally
yeah,
gonna rewatch
Junie, we know you're busy. We know you have something coming up really soon. So we just want to take some time out to say thank you for this opportunity to speak with you.
well, thank you guys.
Oh yeah, like is there any time you're going to be coming to the States, or can
Um,
we do this again? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we can do this again. Now, for coming to the States, it will happen eventually. I just don't know when. I'm going to say yes to a convention in the States at some point in my life.
Okay, yeah. Where would you like your first convention to be? Like, do you have a city preference or a convention preference?
Ideally, New York,
Okay.
Ooh.
because I have a very vague idea of the differences between the different conventions. So it's not like I'm going to be judging based off of that. So I'm going to be judging based off where they take place.
Hmm.
And New York is a city that I really want to see at least once.
Hmm.
So that would be my opportunity to sort of like be a tourist as well.
Cool.
And
Yeah, New
where
York's a
can
fun.
people? Oh, sorry. What were you
I was
saying,
just
Andrew?
saying, New York's a fun place. I always see like great pictures from like New York Comic Con and things like that. So yeah, I think a convention in New York would be a lot of fun. And maybe Steven and I could have a reason
Yeah.
to go up to New York.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anywhere else people can find you? Twitter or Instagram, or where can people find your posts or whatnot?
Yeah, so the main ones are Twitter and Instagram. You can just search my name and you're gonna find them. So yeah, those are the main ones. Like there's a Facebook page, but it's dead. And I am on Blue Sky, but I am not. I'm still not sure this place is actually real. Uh, so Twitter and Instagram. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Andrew, was there anything else you wanted to ask him?
No, I think we got through the questions that we had, and it's been a really great chat.
Same.
Oh, I would like to say one thing. Like I've been to Europe a couple times, and one of the things that I saw is that European covers and the way they do comics in the stores are so much nicer
Yep.
than America. It's like the production design is incredible.
I'm always annoyed because I mean, I don't have that issue with the French books, but with the American books, there's always the problem of like, I prefer to read in English, but the French version always
Mhm.
looks better. So I always like I think the only one that I bought is a Step by Bloody Step because it doesn't have any dialogue. So yeah,
Mhm.
I have to live with the suffering of knowing that there's a much better object. But if I buy that, I'm gonna have to read it in French, and I don't want to because I speak English, so might as well.
Well, Junie, again, thank you. We're really happy we were able to talk to you. You're doing great work, and we hope to see more from you coming soon. Hopefully, more Ninja Turtles, and yeah, hopefully we can have another chat coming up soon.
Yeah. Well, thanks,
All
guys.
right, man. Well,
All right, thank you so
thank you
much.
again, and yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Right.
Bye.